We're being joined by Brigadier General Dr. Maya Elran, who is joining us live from Tel Aviv. Now, Brigadier, this is a crucial moment, and it is a breakthrough that has come after significant negotiations were held behind the scenes that were facilitated by Qatar. What is your reading of what has happened this evening? Because we've just witnessed the Israeli hostages taken into a bus and through the Rafah border crossing, from where they'll be airlifted and taken into Israel.
Well, good evening to everybody. This is really a momentous event. We're very joyous about the 13 people who have been released from Hamas tunnels. And at the same time, we also immersed with anxiety and with memories of what happened on October 7th, with an atrocious attack on our civilians in the south. Where people were butchered over there, and some of them were taken. We're talking about 286 hostages that were kidnapped to the Gaza Strip and has been held by Hamas for such a long period of time. This is the 50th day of their captivity. And we remember that we still have more than 200 people that are being captured by Hamas. We hope that they will be released soon. Right. And we are quite anxious about the future.
Now, Brigadier, I think you can give us a military answer to this. Now, Israel, in the aftermath of what the attack, the most horrific attack that Israel has witnessed in its history since the 7th of October, has unleashed a campaign of airstrikes and also a ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. Now, one expects that these Israeli hostages had been held by Hamas within the tunnels that Hamas has dug, this elaborate network of tunnels. But Israel has been dropping bunker buster bombs in these tunnels. Now, we do not know as to where Hamas has been hiding all of these captives that it has in its custody, but how is Israel trying to ensure that the bombs that it has been dropping on these Hamas tunnels are not killing the Israeli hostages in Hamas's custody?
Well, we are very, very anxious about this issue, and of course we were very careful not to kill civilians in general. Of course, we have the primary concern for our own kidnapped hostages, but we also think about the Palestinian civilians over there. And we are making efforts so as to limit our attack to terrorist targets in Gaza, and that's what we are doing mostly. Right. We have been trying, and successfully so, to move people down to the southern part of Gaza, so the humanitarian issues are definitely.
Brigadier, my question, I'll come to the question of what is happening with the Palestinian civilians, the innocent civilians who have been caught in this mind-numbing violence. But my question to you was this. Now, there are reports that Israel has been repeatedly dropping these bunker buster bombs in order to destroy these Hamas tunnels. But Hamas has kept these Israeli captives that it has in its custody inside of these tunnels. So how is Israel trying to ensure that the bombs that it is dropping in the Palestinian territories are not killing the Israeli hostages?
Well, of course, we're trying our best to make that not possible. It shows that we are, familiar with the scene, even inside the tunnels. And then I must tell you again that I'm still anxious about what's happening there. We don't know what has happened to the rest of the kidnapped hostages, and we hold Hamas responsible for their fate. This is the most important thing. If any of them has been hurt in one way or another, it is the responsibility of Hamas. Right. And we are doing everything possible not to damage any of them, as we care also about the Palestinian citizens.
Right. Now, I also want to talk to you a bit about the Palestinian civilians now, as things stand, in terms of the images that have come forth. You know, the scale of the carnage in the Gaza Strip is just horrific. There are at least about 15,000 plus people have been killed, and 70% of those who have been killed are said to be women and children, or 6,000 Palestinian children. You know, these are children who are not even aware that they are Palestinians, who've been bombed to smithereens. You know, how does Israel reconcile its objective of trying to destroy Hamas to what is at this moment unfolding on the Gaza Strip?
Okay, so number one, I do not recognize the numbers that you have mentioned. I know that people have been killed over there, unfortunately. Those who have not, removed themselves from the battlefield down to the southern part of Gaza through the safety corridor that the IDF has provided for them. Probably a lot of people have been killed, some of them also women and children, unfortunately. This is the total responsibility of Hamas, who initiated this terrible war by doing what it did on October 10th, butchering our own people. So this is their responsibility. Israel will stop the war immediately if Hamas surrenders. If the leaders of Hamas get out of their tunnels, their holes, and surrender. By that, they can save not only the Palestinian people, but the Middle East as a whole.
Now, Brigadier, Israel has one of the most sophisticated armies in the world. It can carry out what can be described as precision strikes, which can target the Hamas leadership. And also, a lot of the Hamas leadership is not even present in the Gaza Strip. Do you think Israel has been trying for precision strikes, or, as was said by Yoav Gallant, the defense minister of Israel, it was maximum damage on the Palestinian territory of Gaza that Israel is focused upon?
No, first of all, the objective of the war is not to destroy Gaza by any means. This is one thing. The second thing is, yes, we have our own precision capacities, and we're using it very, very carefully so as to minimize the damage. Unfortunately, people in Gaza some of them have not been cautious enough to go down from the battlefield. And they are now, many of them are now concentrated in the southern part of Gaza. So this is a very, very dirty war, no doubt about that. But I see only one responsible party to these events, and this is Hamas. They had to take that into consideration. They miscalculated the situation. They miscalculated the consequences of their decision to launch this terrible attack on Israel. And now they and the Palestinian people are bearing the consequences. This is tragic, but there is no way out of it. We have to eliminate Hamas. Hamas is an evil threat, not only to Israel, but to the Middle East as a whole and to Western civilization, and to democracies all over the world. And we're going to pursue doing that as long as it needs.
I just want to come back to the conflict at the moment and also to the hostage crisis at the moment. I know it would be classified information, but a lot of people would want to know an answer to this, because Israel simply had no idea that Hamas was planning an attack, and it was caught off guard on the 7th of October. A lot of people are questioning, does Israel have any intelligence as to where Hamas, at this point of time, is holding the hostages that it has in its custody?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to answer this particular question. This has to do with military intelligence information. I'm not privy to this information, so I can't unfortunately answer to that. I know in general that we do have very good intelligence most of the times. It's true that it doesn't work all the time, but as to the details of the moment, I'm sorry I can't really answer you about that.
All right, General. Brigadier, and I also want to ask you a question that would be slightly political and not just purely in terms of military. Because of this humanitarian pause, Benjamin Netanyahu was not in favor of a negotiation with Hamas. He did not want a ceasefire of sorts, not even a humanitarian pause, because he said that would break the momentum of the war. But in the last fortnight, because he had to meet with some of the family members who have been staging protests, who've been demanding accountability from their government, he eventually had to crumble under pressure. What do you think this humanitarian pause does to the Israelis' ground offensive and also to this campaign of bombings that Israel has been carrying on?
Well, I say two things about, concerning your question. Number one, I think that the government was listening very, very carefully to the plight of the families, and I am commending the government for being flexible and not to stick to the early position of not talking with Hamas. We do not talk with Hamas. We do everything indirectly through the Qataris and the Egyptians and the Americans. So there are lots of others who are part of these negotiations. And but at the same time, I personally, and I know the majority of the people in Israel, appreciate and support this decision, which was not a very simple one. It's a very, very difficult decision, but I'm happy that it was taken, and I'm happy that the procedures are working and the people are being freed, released, and I hope that all the captured hostages will be freed as soon as possible. We have to do that now, and this is one thing.
Out of time.
The second question is
yes, please go ahead and make the point. Yes.
The second question is about the future of the war. The decision of the Israeli government as of now, and I hope that it will stay consistent with that, is that we will not stop the fighting and we will not stop the counteroffensive of the IDF against Hamas until it is eliminated.
All right.
This politically and militarily. And I hope this is going to be the case, because we have to remember all the time the future of Israel. We have to think about the future of the Palestinian people and the Middle East as a whole. And Hamas has to go away.
Right. I think you've made that point very forcefully, Brigadier. My final question to you, and you need to answer that in just 30 seconds because we are short of time. Now, this deal that has been agreed upon is for a period of 4 days. 50 Israeli hostages are to be released. 150 Palestinian prisoners are to be released, but it can be extended. My question to you is, speaking in terms of military terms, what do you think the military advisors to Netanyahu would be telling the Prime Minister there? Will this humanitarian pause continue in exchange for the prisoners, or do you think Israel is again going back to its offensive?
I think that the decision of the government to put the fate of the kidnapped hostages first on our agenda is the right one. It's a moral one, it's a right one, and I support it personally, and most of the people in Israel do that. This does not mean that we will not return to our counter-offensive against Hamas because of the reasons that I mentioned before.
I think you've summed it up well. Thank you very much indeed, Brigadier General Dr. Mia Elran, for joining us and getting us that perspective. These are live images that we are getting at this moment. What we can confirm is that 24 of the hostages that Hamas had taken into custody on the 7th of October, they've been allowed to walk free. That includes 13 Israelis, 10 Thai nationals and 1 Filipino. On the other side, 150 Palestinians who had been languishing in prisons, many of them women and young children, who had been in Israeli prisons for offences such as throwing stones at the armoured tanks of the Israelis when they go into raids inside the Palestinian territories. They too have been allowed to walk free. This is a very tenuous situation. A lot can still go wrong, but in the first phase of this deal, it appears that things have gone by and large according to plan. As we look at these images, we'll slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll of course continue tracking the developments that are unfolding at this moment at the Rafah border crossing and also at the West Bank. Stay tuned to WION.